The following content is not intended as a substitute for professional legal advice, medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your attorney, advocate, physician, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding any medical or educational concerns.
Good morning, good morning. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 1 of Empower Dyslexia. Ziggy, can you believe we're at Season 2 already?
I can. It's been a long time coming. It's great to have you back in studio.
Man, it's been a whirlwind. I mean, we've been all over the place, planning on making all the plans for Season 2. We've been out talking to a ton of people. So we are so excited to be back. Here on Empower Dyslexia, we're here to help you become a better informed partner in education. And that's what it's all about, is being able to properly advocate for your child to receive the help that they need. On this show, we discuss dyslexia and other related disorders, research, interventions, special education policy. We also interview people with life experiences and the struggles that they've gone through with dyslexia, or the successes that they've gone through. There's their personal stories. I mean, that's huge to validate and talk about and listen to. Here on Season 2, we want to say thank you for all the love and support that the dyslexia community has shown us. It really, really helps. Thank you so much. There's a lot of exciting news coming in the next few weeks. I cannot wait to tell you of the things that are coming. More shows, more experts, helping more people. I mean, that's what this show is about, is making sure that we can provide you with the most relevant information so you can go out and then advocate for your child. Like I was saying, we've been really busy since we took a break in November and December, planning Season 2 and all the great things that are coming. Dr. Conway and I went on basically a speaking tour. We were in Portland, and then came back here to Dallas, and then went to Arkansas.
You guys were everywhere.
We were everywhere, and talking to a lot of people, and great things were coming out of it. It was amazing. As always, you can get us, or if you're listening to us now live, we're on Facebook or YouTube Live, or you can get us on all your favorite audio, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, AnyPod, Spotify, all these great apps right here. So make sure that you go subscribe and like us, and you'll get our updates. Learning Ally. We still have our Learning Ally discount. So if you have a child with a learning disability, or you would just like to have audiobooks, Learning Ally is a great resource. You can go to their website, type in discount code ED20, and then you can get 20% off a new membership for the first year. So thank you, Learning Ally, for doing that. And then we have actually come up with a QR code. So we'll put this up on the screen for just a second. You can just use your camera on the screen. It will take you to all of our social media platforms that we're on, and you can connect with us that way also.
And as you saw in the intro, the new intro that Stephen has for us, it's going to be on the screen for about 4 seconds. So if you're tuning in right at the start of the show, you can also find it then.
Thank you, Ziggy. So today's topic has been a long time coming. It's my favorite subject. It's all about me. No, just kidding. I threw a challenge out to Dr. Conway on show 18 about the Now Foundation program, because as you know, most of you know, I'm dyslexic. I never received any remediation, dropped out of high school in 10th grade, only to go back 6 years later and get my GED. And I've struggled my entire life with dyslexia. So I threw this challenge out to Dr. Conway on, like I said, on show 18. Let's take a watch real quick. Do you have that video, Z? No?
No, I don't have, I don't have that
Well,
one queued up.
we won't take a watch.
I can certainly try and find it for you real quick if you want to vamp.
Okay. Well, no, I mean, it's fine. It's show 18. You know, Dr. Conway had talked about how much improvement, you know, it didn't matter if it was a school age child or if it was an adult. We were still seeing the same level of remediation and success with this program. So I threw a challenge out that if this was as good as he said it was, that, you know, I'm your test case. Let's do it. Now, we've got a lot of people asking about an update because I was supposed to do updates. That's my fault. I drug my feet a little bit on getting started. And then, you know, we've been in now for a couple of months. And we'll talk about all that here in just a few minutes. But we have Dr. Conway live with us today. Just a little bit about Dr. Conway. He is the founder of the first 501c3 charter school for dyslexia. He's the director of the Moore Center, the USA, and he has one in Trinidad and Tobago. He's also the CEO of the Neurodevelopmental of Words now. It's an online tech company. He is a AFL researcher assistant at the University of Florida. And I've grown to really like Dr. Conway, and you know he's definitely a very caring and giving person. So let's bring Dr. Conway on.
Afternoon, Stephen. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
Sorry, I'm 2 hours ahead. We're at 1 o'clock, so morning and afternoon at the same time.
No problem. So, Dr. Conway, can you give us a little more information about you? You know, your research, your studies, and things like that around dyslexia and you know, alexia or stroke rehab.
Sure. So basically, I started working in private dyslexia clinics back in 1986. And I worked with folks who were pioneers in understanding the language, sensory, motor, linguistic, all the features that comprise affecting the development of phonological processing, which then we know now is our #1 key predictor of your reading skills, and how that really impacts the development of those skills over time. So in training with that group in California, then in 1989, I began training with a group called the Morris Center. There is no Dr. Morris, although I mistakenly get called that from time to time. The Morris Center was started by a developmental behavioral pediatrician whose name is Ann Alexander. Ann had the vision to say, really, we know that kids with developmental disorders, not just dyslexia, because the clinic's geared towards all children, teens, young adults who have neurodevelopmental disorders. So it could be a language disorder, could be ADHD, could be some complex neurological problem that's affecting development and learning, could be autism, could be dyslexia, any and all of the learning disabilities. The clinic has a team of healthcare professionals designed to provide expertise in the assessment, not just for the purpose of diagnosis, but assessment for the purpose of planning what to do treatment-wise to try to improve these weaker or less efficient skills into strengths, and most importantly, to improve functional skills and functional abilities of that person to their full potential. So from the Morris Center, then we published a paper in 1991. It's in the Annals of Dyslexia, it basically profiled more than 10 kids who come through the Moore Center's clinic and had received this transdisciplinary team approach to changing language skills, changing literacy skills. We didn't report it in the paper, but we also used OT to work on visual motor skills. You'll see some kids who score poorly on visual memory skills. Those aren't dyslexia, but those are things that can co-occur with dyslexia and certainly are important for functional abilities in an academic setting. Efficiency of handwriting, efficiency of visual memory, attention, modulation, body control, coordination skills, all of these things impact your growth and development. So from 1991, then we were awarded a large grant where Dr. Alexander was a co-PI with the Torgerson group at FSU, and the Moore Center and FSU partnered on a 5-year research study with 2 arms to it. The first research study had a whole project on early identification of at-risk children at age 5. So you could say we were one of the first groups to really take a large-scale approach to not only early intervention, but prevention of reading disabilities, phonological problems that might later be classified or diagnosed as dyslexia if something wasn't done to change skills now. We did that study and showed that when we took the Moore Center's neurodevelopmental multisensory approach and really systematically built up the phonological processing skills in a way that matches cognitive developmental psychology models of how the brain typically builds phonological processing skills, then we saw a large difference in outcomes. Essentially, kids who got that modified neurodevelopmental approach from the Moore Center, we had 91% who passed kindergarten and first grade and went on to be successful in school. If they got no treatment, or they got just some extra one-on-one time doing whatever the teacher was doing, or they got some systematic structured phonics, then anywhere from 25 to 40% did not pass kindergarten and first grade. It was a massive difference. We brought those children back at the end of second grade, measured their skills, and measured their skills again at the end of 4th grade. And the kids who got the multisensory and neurodevelopmental approach of bottom-up to rebuild the speech processing phonological skills and then go to the language literacy skills, those kids showed continued growth in phonological awareness, continued improvement in decoding skills, and continued improvement in reading fluency. So that study showed that our best efforts to date should be in early intervention and prevention at age 5. Sadly, those results were published in 1998, and now here we are in 2020, and people are finally starting to come around to say, oh, gee, we really could do more early. And thankfully, we have data that backs up that view 100% and says we absolutely could have much better outcomes with early interventions. And we already have interventions that are proven. We don't have to go make up more interventions unless somebody does another large-scale study that's called a randomized controlled trial and finds a study that has better outcomes than what the Moore Center was able to achieve. And we look forward to that day because that's what science is supposed to do. You're supposed to build a better program and advance things and get more and more effective over time. I'll pause right there for a second, Steve, because that's a lot of information just about that prevention study. Any questions or comments from you at that point?
The one thing that I've learned, when I'm doing the research and seeing what programs are out there and what's actually offered today, you hit the nail right on the head about providing intervention early so these kids don't struggle and then deal with the anxiety and depression and all of the other issues that we tend to have that come along with, the struggling in school. That alone is why I'm doing what I'm doing also. I want to make sure that families and children don't have to go through what I went through and what my family went through. So, I think Ziggy found my challenge that I threw out to you. Hold on, let's take a look at it real quick.
Okay.
You talking about somebody who's 60 that's actually taking your Now program. As you and I have talked before, I'm 40. What am I? 45?
Yeah, asked his wife.
Yeah. So
I forget too.
I want to throw a challenge out there to you, Dr. Conway. I've never been remediated.
And while he's doing that up, Steve, I'll just say that dyslexia doesn't run in my family, it
you know,
gallops.
putting
So,
thoughts on
but
paper, those type of
fortunate
things.
for
So I challenge you
myself
to
and
put me
others,
through your program,
we
and
got
I'll
early
report and
intervention.
see exactly what it does. And tell
Around
the public
age
we're out here
4 for
exactly
myself.
what
My
I am
brother got
here
early
talking.
intervention at age 6.
Sorry about that. We were playing the video and you weren't able to see it. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Anyway, so that was the challenge. I wanted to see if, if it could work on anybody. If it can work on me, it can work on anybody. Is my thinking. So, we threw that challenge out there and got going. So, let's just a little bit of information about me. Again, I'm dyslexic. I was identified in third grade when we moved back from Australia. Is when they identified me as having learning disabilities, and that's what they called it. And I believe they called it dyslexia back then, but they lean more towards the learning disability label. I was held back in the third grade, and I struggled. I mean, third grade, elementary school was so bad. Third grade was definitely bad. Fourth grade was bad. I mean, it was to the point where, I just would not do my work. And I'm not sure if it was, I just didn't know how, what the situation was, but it got to the point where my principal decided that we would give spankings or licks every time I didn't turn in my homework. Well, I mean, as you can guess, I was in the office every day getting my SWAT because I didn't turn in my homework. Then when they figured out that didn't work, they started having me write sentences or paragraphs. And I remember at one point being pulled out of class, and I had, I don't know, it's like 250 paragraphs to write. And I sat in the cafeteria by myself all day for multiple days trying to get these 250 paragraphs written so I could go back to class. And this is basically how my school career or my school environment was. Although I had some amazing, caring teachers, they were the only reason that I didn't quit earlier. But, by 10th grade, because of my struggles in school had boiled over into my family life, I was just done at that point. So I decided that I was going to quit school in 10th grade. Because I was failing school, I couldn't play football. And I mean, that was, one of the only other things that was keeping me in school. So the no pass, no play really hurt me. And, I'm glad that we have the help that we have today, but that was something that really, really was detrimental to me. And then I believed the lie. I believed that, this was as good as it was going to get. I mean, that's what I was told. This is who you are. This is what you got. This is about as good as it's going to get. So, but Dr. Conway, I know that we talk about this all the time, but when I first sent a message to Dr. Conway that I'd like to have a conversation with him, his scheduler sent me an email back and said, "Hey, he has 15 minutes on this day for a phone call." So got on the phone with him, and I mean, probably the first couple words out of my mouth is I told him he was selling snake oil because everything he was telling me sounded too good to be true. And, I've heard, everything from all the programs that are out on the market and believed what these programs were saying. So that's, I don't want any programs out there that are hurting kids or not doing what they say they can do. So that's the reason why I said that he was selling snake oil. And I said, well, if you prove to me that you're not, where's your research? Where's your papers? Where's this? And he buried me in more research and papers than, I ever wanted. I'm like, Dr. Conway, I'm dyslexic. I'm not going to sit here and read all this, right? No. But I did. I struggled through it, but I read all of it. And it was amazing. And the more and more I looked into it, I was excited about, this type of program being out there. So we got started. Dr. Conway, do you have the date that we got started on your program?
I think for you, I don't know the exact, yeah, I can look. I think it was in November, is that right? September?
Yeah, I think it was either late September, early October-ish. And because of work and doing all the other stuff, there were some breaks in there.
Right.
But I tell you what, can you go ahead and full disclosure, can you tell everybody where I was when we first started?
Let me correct the date, Stephen. Your first session was on August 5th.
Okay.
So actually it was earlier than both of us thought of it. It was in August we finally got started. And to date, you have done sessions up through February 5th.
And like I said, there's been breaks in there. There was a couple of times that I've taken a couple weeks off because, either we're traveling or work or whatever. But, other than that, we've been trucking along.
Yeah.
But so it's not me telling you. Can you, we did a little bit of pre-testing. We did do some educational testing that we'll share with everybody at the end of this. But can you tell the audience where I was from y'all's perspective when we started?
Yeah, we knew that just on the pre-checks, you had some phonological skills, but overall on a standardized test of phonological awareness, your skills are below the 21st percentile. And so we know if you have poor phonological awareness, you're not going to have the strongest skills you're possible of developing for reading, spelling, and particularly for decoding. When they gave you nonsense words to spell, we said a sample of 5 nonsense words, you spelled 1 out of 5 correct. You had certain letter sound knowledge was strong for the bulk of letters, which is typically true for most people with dyslexia. It's not a trouble of learning this letter, this sound, this letter, this sound. It's compounded by when it becomes a series of letters and you have to decode it and try not to make one of 5 errors, which is adding sounds, leaving out sounds, substituting one sound in place of another, repeating sounds, or reversing sounds. So those are the kind of mistakes that you were making and you weren't picking up on it. And we knew that's going to put you at higher risk for your accuracy of decoding, reading, and spelling. So yeah, the formal testing, the psychologist there in Texas, she did it. She's an independent. She's not involved with my company. She's not involved with you. And so then we'll have her data both pre and post as a way to track progress from standardized testing. And I think an important piece to throw in with this is the reason why when you and I talked before, I was confident we could do this is, I mentioned the first study with 5-year-olds, which is what's called a randomized controlled trial, which means it's the gold standard of science. You get a large number of students and randomly assign them to one of 4 interventions, and then you've got equal groups. And then when you get the outcomes, you have a high degree of confidence that the outcomes from that study would show the same results in California, in Florida, in Michigan, in any English-speaking country for that matter, because we did this gold standard of research called the randomized controlled trial. But we did another 5-year randomized controlled trial with 8 to 10-year-olds. And these were kids who already had dyslexia diagnoses, were already in special ed placements with IEPs. And we collected the school's own data, which showed in 16 months, they came in scoring about a 78 on their combination of reading and comprehension skills. And 16 months later, they're still at a 78, which means they made literally no functional gains in 60 months of the special ed services that school district provided. Then we gave them 8 weeks of intervention, not because that's all the program took, that's just how much we could afford to provide to this group of 30 students one-on-one. And in 8 weeks, they made about 22 to 24 standard score point gain in phonological awareness and in decoding skills. And for folks who aren't familiar with that kind of scale of standard score points, that's the proper scale to use to measure growth over time. But it means they've gone from like about the 5th percentile to the 45th percentile in how they can sound out words. We stop intervention, you bring it back a year later, remeasure, bring back 2 years later and remeasure. And overall, the group continued to grow those skills over time, even though treatment stopped. One huge finding of that study was just with that dose of intervention at 8 weeks, 40% of those elementary school kids staffed out of special ed. They no longer needed special ed services. They read on grade level, so they didn't qualify for special ed services, and they were ready to progress and move forward into regular ed. And that's unheard of. And in the USA today, majority of programs across the country are showing a 5% discharge rate, or taking children out of special ed and moving them back into regular ed because they no longer need the services or the accommodations. We then did another 5-year study from 1999 to 2004, same type of design, same age group, but the question for this study was, how do you change reading fluency? The first study changed their phonological awareness and their decoding accuracy, but those kids who were 8 to 10 did not improve in reading speed with just those 8 weeks of intervention. Now, those of us who are trained as developmental scientists and healthcare practitioners knew that's not a reasonable expectation. You can't teach a 10-year-old how to ride a bike and put them in bike races the next week, because the kids they'd be competing against have had years more practice experience than the kid who just learned how to ride the bike. The same thing is true about reading. We just taught you how to decode. We just brought your phonological processing up to your IQ level. And now you're going to need a little bit of practice before those skills become automatic.
Right.
And that's what the second 5-year study showed. When you actually did the intervention and we compared it to a group that got direct explicit fluency training with choral repeated readings, chunking reading, paraphrase reading, flashcards of common sight words, the direct fluency training was actually less effective than just training those decoding skills and those phonological skills to a much higher degree of automaticity. It's kind of like saying when you learn how to drive a car, you can drive a car, but initially it's a lot more effort, it takes a lot more thinking, and you're not very fluid or automatic with it. As you practice driving more and more, then the brain wiring gets stronger, the communication pathways are more efficient, and then you're actually able to do the task with less brain effort or brain activity because the brain is much, much more efficient in what it's doing. In that midst, then in 2001, I started doing stroke rehab research, and we did 10 years of stroke rehab research. Now, some people get confused when they see my CV, and they see my first publication is in 1998, and it's a stroke paper, and they think that's my dissertation. That's actually a paper I first published when I was a graduate student. I worked with a team of leading scientists in the world of stroke aphasia, stroke rehab, and we showed that you could take these developmental programs and even begin to rebuild phonological processing and decoding skills in adults who had a brain damage that doesn't cause dyslexia, because dyslexia is developmental, it's genetic. So they call this one phonological alexia.
So let me ask you a question there. So
Sure.
You're saying that you took the same program that you use to do intervention with children with dyslexia, and use that same methodology with people who had a stroke.
Exactly. What we're trying to do is a neurorehabilitative approach, which means can we go back in and rebuild some of the wiring, some of the systems that were there before, and help rebuild phonological skills, reteach letter sound knowledge, rebuild decoding skills, because those skills have been damaged because of the brain injury. And in that study, we showed a large success on the one person that study was on initially. And then since then, we've done another couple of decades of more research. Our latest publication came out in 2018, showing that we're still seeing strong success with a neurodevelopmental bottom-up approach for phonological alexia due to brain injury, which mirrors what we saw when we're doing developmental dyslexia work as well.
That's amazing.
It's science. That's what this is supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about using science to empower programs. Now, the gold standard of science is it's why your pediatrician knows to give penicillin to strep throat, or your pediatrician knows, amoxicillin might be a better choice, or C-chlor, or something else. And the antibiotic they use for ear infection is different than the antibiotic for strep throat, is because those medications were tested with randomized controlled trials. And we have decades of randomized controlled trials on dyslexia. But most of the popular programs out there don't have any randomized controlled trials. So they're not as effective and they're not as consistent in their outcomes because they really weren't scientifically studied first. They've just been made up, and we keep throwing them out there again and again because kids showed some progress. But some progress is not good enough unless it closes the gap and it gets the kid to their potential. If IQ's here and your reading's down here, we want to close the gap, get their reading skills to their IQ level, get their reading skills to, get their phonological awareness to their IQ level. And that's what those studies show was completely possible, whether you're 5, whether you're 8. And then the Moore Center Clinic has been in business for, 31 years now. And what we do as a fee for service there is try to provide these services in a highly intensive medical healthcare team to rebuild these skills. And it's a one-time shot in just 3 to 4 months is usually what it takes to rebuild a lot of these skills for most kids with typical mild, moderate, severe learning disabilities or dyslexia. But we also see much more complex cases of autism, with mild, moderate autism, or brain injury in children, or a child who's had chemotherapy of the brain and radiation of the brain. That can cause white matter damage, cause learning issues. The good, important news is neuroplasticity of the brain is lifelong. It doesn't go away. So, but then in 2013, we took all that medical model work because many people can't afford a medical clinic. It's too expensive. It's not in your neighborhood. It's not in your town. And we opened the online ed tech company called Neurodevelopment of Words. And that's when I took and branded all the work we've done at the Moore Center into a new program name called Now Foundations for Speech, Language, Reading, and Spelling. And then we have 3 other Now programs as well. But that company now puts out services webcam to webcam across the world. We have students in Jordan, the country. We have students in Canada, students in UK, students all across America. We've had students from Singapore, Malaysia. As any English-speaking country, we're able to push out not just randomized controlled trial, highly evidence-based, highly effective programs, but at a much lower cost. And to my knowledge, we're the only company that really is a sliding fee scale company. We literally can match most any family's budget with reduced costs. If we can't, we tell you what we can do, and we work hard to try to help figure out how to get services to children, teenagers, college students, and even 45, now 46-year-old guys like you, Steve.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, well, you also have students in Dallas, Texas.
True.
So, that kind of brings us back to where we're at now, and our challenge.
Yes.
And I have to tell you, even though, being at the time 45 and felt like I was kind of over, any of the stigma of being dyslexic and everything else. I mean, it was definitely intimidating to know that I'm still going to have to go face dyslexia.
Yeah.
And my struggles. And that was one of the reasons why I kind of dragged my feet to begin with and getting started. And I believe it was the first week that we started the program. I got done with the intervention. I picked the phone, called Dr. Conway, and I was mad. And I'm sure I said some few choice words, and I'm like, hey, why didn't somebody do this for me when I was little? Because I can see what's going on. I can see the difference.
Right.
If I would have had this when I was in second, third grade, whatever, I wouldn't have had to struggle my entire life. It was unbelievable. Mm-hmm. So, can you tell a little bit more about, where I was and the things that y'all saw? What you said, I only got one of however many it was nonsense words spelled right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's not surprising, because if you would have given me regular words, I'd have probably only got one of them right too. So.
Well, I remember you and I had talked before, and you had said that, pretty much anything you write that's of a professional caliber communication or communication even with your kids, teachers, and principal at school, you would write it, and then you'd have your wife, Amy, review it and edit it and correct all the spelling mistakes.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, so that's a great point. If you don't get remediation, once you get to, adulthood and you're out in the professional world and you can't put together a proper email, that limits the type of jobs that you can have and what you can do.
Right.
I mean, yeah, I've got talk to text, or spell check, but if I can't even get close to what the word's supposed to be, spell check can't help me.
Right.
I mean, I could have a stack of dictionaries next to me and still wouldn't be able to figure out how to spell it. So,
yeah. And we started your work at the ground level, which is what we learned in neuro rehab. It's what we learned in working with 5-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 24-year-olds. We've worked with PhD MDs who had dyslexia. One of our first students in the online company was actually a heart surgeon who couldn't sound out words. And he knew he had dyslexia, and he always worked around it, compensated for it, had all kinds of accommodations. But he was tired of the accommodations when he had children and he was making mistakes, reading bedtime stories to them, and they were correcting his mistakes. And he said, happy that my 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old, or whatever the age was, could read better than me, but I'm a heart surgeon, for God's sake. How come I can't read as well as they can? And we put them online, and we did crazy hours because I've got some staff who are willing to work 10 p.m. at night, and we got him through it because he was a full-time heart surgeon. And it took us about 6 months, over 100 sessions to rebuild those skills all the way up through 5-syllable words, up through, upper high school, college level paragraph reading, and then we're done, and those skills are finished.
I mean, so you talk about reading bedtime stories. I mean, my wife, being the amazing mother that she is, she used to read to the boys every night. And I was always so jealous because I didn't feel adequate enough to go in there and read these stories to them, like the books that she was reading. Yeah. So I would tell the boys, okay, well, Dad's going to read to you tonight. Go pick a book. And they go get the book and bring it down. And of course, they weren't old enough at that time to know what I was doing, but I would make up the entire book. Yeah. I'd make off the pictures, I'd make a story up and use their names in it. And while I was jealous of Amy because she was able to sit in there and spend that time with them reading and have that connection, she then later told me she was jealous because I could sit in there and make up an entire story off of the pictures in the book using their names. And she thought that was cooler than being able to read the book, but I wanted to be able to read it. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's huge. I mean, that's the other piece of it that I struggle with forever, not being able to read to my own kids. Yeah.
So, and it affects a lot of different professions as well. You'll see, no one's collected data that I know of on this profession level of incidents, but we will commonly see more architects having dyslexia, or more engineers having dyslexia, more surgeons than pediatricians having dyslexia. So they basically steered themselves into professions that use their strengths and avoid their weaknesses. But the goal is, and what rehab has taught us and what developmental science has taught us, is these skills can be brought up to somebody's IQ level, and that's the only goal we should have, because we've already proven scientifically that this is possible. So to say that it takes 3 to 5 years and it's a big battle, big struggle, those days need to stop, because that's not state-of-the-art science. That's outdated methods, outdated materials that keep being used because people are not going back to science that says, let's find what's proven to be most effective. You don't want your pediatrician mixing chemicals and randomly giving you cocktails and hoping they work, because your pediatrician knows the body, pediatrician knows the brain, pediatrician knows you better than anybody else. So it's not the practitioner or the program by themselves that are most effective for kids. It's the expertise of the practitioner and the science behind the program. I hear people saying it's not programs that help kids, it's teachers. Well, that's not completely true, because a teacher using a bad program, no matter how much she cares or how much she is, driven to help, is going to be less effective than even a mediocre teacher using a highly structured, highly, scientifically studied by randomized controlled trials programs because she's using a methodology that's scientifically been proven to be more effective. But when we have high caliber teachers and high caliber programs, then we get the best chances for the most success for the most children, teens, college students, adults. It doesn't matter the age.
So where are we right now in the program for me?
So for you, we've gone through the beginning stages of it, which goes through single syllable work up to multi-syllable work. And then from the multi-syllable work, you're going through 2-syllable to 3-syllable to 4-syllable. It just keeps on climbing. And our goal is to get you all the way to 5-syllable words, where you're accurately decoding 5-syllable words. You're accurately spelling 5-syllable nonsense words and real words, because you're really taxing that phonological system. And that we're applying those skills to book reading, paragraph reading of challenging texts until we get all the way up to a level to where you are working at that level of material that's, upper high school, college level material. Because we know that if you can accurately, reliably sound out and read upper level high school, college material, you can pretty much read anything.
Right. Well, so we were talking about spelling or putting together documents. I was asked to give kind of a review of what I'd seen so far, and the post that I wrote would normally have taken me all day long with many edits back and forth between me and my wife. And I wrote it in about 15 minutes, and I sent it off to my wife. I'm like, hey, I want you to review this real quick. And she told me later that she's like, when I saw your email come through, I thought to myself, I don't have time for this. I've got to go do this other thing over here, and I don't have time to sit here and go back and forth with you. But she said she went ahead and opened the email and read it, and her response to me in that email was just, wow. One word, wow.
Nice.
She said, later on when we talked about it, she said there was no spelling mistakes at all.
And that's because you use spell check or no?
No, I did not use spell check. I mean, obviously spell check's on it.
Right.
But, I wasn't trying to figure out how to use other words that I didn't, because I didn't know how to spell a word, trying to rewrite the sentence with another word that I didn't know how to spell. So it took less time, no spelling mistakes. And, the fact that I'm able to spell, my big thing now is the fact that I'm able to spell nonsense words is amazing to me, because there's no way that I'd ever have seen this word before.
Mm-hmm.
And I can sound out what, letters are supposed to be in this word and spell them. And it's pretty effortlessly. It's amazing.
And I think it's important for your audience to understand how much of a change is that for you. That's just like a small change. You were actually pretty good already. That was a big change. I mean, how would you characterize the amount of change that happened?
It's life-changing. I mean, that's how much change it is. It's life-changing. When you are able to spell and read properly, it opens up so many more opportunities and allows you to be and produce the things that that you were always able to do.
Exactly.
I tell a story about carrying around Lord of the Rings in high school, wanting to read it but never actually being able to. And I paid fines for late fees and, keeping it because I wanted to read it. I just started, last week, I just started reading Lord of the Rings. I'm going to finish it. So, and that's one of the things that we're doing in our tutoring session is we're going to read Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. And you're at a level right now where in 80 sessions, which is not our typical amount of time, but you're an adult who's highly motivated, so that can shorten the amount of time. And odds are you've been working on this a lot even outside of the sessions, which also would shorten the number of actual treatment hours that are needed. So it's like in less than 80 hours, you've gone from 2 sound single syllable words up through decoding 5 syllable, multi-syllable nonsense words and real words. And you're in a 10th grade book, and you're reading that 10th grade book with between 97 to 99% accuracy. And that's just a regular, graded series, or sometimes the staff are taking, high school or college level textbooks and then doing a Flesch-Kincaid index on them to get a general estimate of what the readability level is expected to be, and then using that in a graded fashion to build you up to the next higher level. Because once you hit that 97 to 99% accurate, we're ready to raise you to a higher grade level and make sure you maintain that accuracy as those skills continue to increase. So the typical duration, though, is really more like 180 sessions, not 80, more like 180 sessions. But know that because I own the company and I'm the voluntary CEO, it's really more about setting, cautious expectations, because there's a lot of variables that come into play with how quickly or slowly somebody will progress. So 180 is the average, 120 is typically the shortest, and 240 is typically the largest. So it's like 180 plus or minus 60. If we're doing 1 session a day, that means an average duration is 9 months to finish rebuilding the phonological system, rebuilding the decoding skills, drastically improving spelling from a phonetic standpoint. But sight word reading and sight word spelling and reading fluency are going to take about a year of practice, because you've just now built those systems to be working with much more efficiency.
The other thing that I was amazed about was when I took that week or 2 week break or whatever, and we came back, I was fully expecting, have to, go back in and, go over all the stuff that I forgot. And I hadn't forgotten any of it. I didn't miss a beat. And
that's it.
And
the truth is, other programs use multi-sensory memorization techniques. Multi-sensory memorization is all that's what it is. It's memorization. We know with memorization, once you stop doing it many times, those skills drop away. Part of the reason why some of these programs take 3 to 5 years is they do the memorization training so long, until it's so ingrained that you're not going to forget the memorized rules, but those rules and that approach still don't lead to more reading fluency for the majority of students. And they don't, or typically have very little to no improvement in spelling skills, because you really just split your skill training, this one decoding skill with this one heavy focus on phonics rules. And don't get me wrong, phonics are important. We all know that. But phonics is up here, phonological awareness is down here. Phonological awareness develops during speech, spoken language skills from 0 to 4 years of age. It's already being built. Letters come on board in the US usually around age 4 and 5. In the UK, it's like around age 2 and 3. In the Netherlands, letters aren't being taught to about age 7. So there's not always a correlation between when you got letters and how good you read. But the important piece is language is built from a speech language spoken system first, reading and spelling comes second, and written composition is the last set of skills.
Right.
So you're on that trajectory. You've really gone back in and rebuilt from the speech language up into the reading and spelling, and then you're taking those skills and continuing to use them.
Right. Well, so there's that piece, and I know that there may be some people that think that, well, that's anecdotal, that's one person,
Right.
or my experience.
Yep. And people should question that.
And I welcome them to question that. I want them to question it. Please don't take what I'm saying as the gospel. Go out and do research and figure it out. Ask questions. But I also want the viewers to know that my oldest son, Asher, who's a freshman, went through the NOW program, the first piece of it also.
Yep, that now foundations.
Right. So he was identified late in the 7th grade. We decided not to put him in remediation because he was in the higher level classes, and he was doing pretty well.
Right.
We thought that with accommodations, that would be really all that he needs. And then going into the summer of his freshman year, we decided, let's go ahead and try him in the NOW program too.
And Stephen, you guys had him tested as well. The testing by the psychologists at the schools had showed that most of his phonological skills, decoding skills, sight word skills were all below the 15th percentile.
Well,
they were quite it was actually quite remarkable that he was doing so well in school with such severely impaired reading skills.
He was in the first percentile on quite a few areas.
True. Yeah, true.
I mean, I shared his testing results with the same doctor that did my test, and her response was, "Well, why didn't you give him any intervention?" And she said, "If you would have shown me this, in the past, I would have told
Right.
you that this child would never be successful without intervention."
Right.
So, do you want to talk about what we saw with Asher?
Yeah, I mean, Asher just really moved through the program very quickly. One, he was very motivated. Not many 15-year-olds are that motivated to be doing lessons online, either before, after school, in the evening, which is when most of his sessions were happening, because he's very busy. He's in sports, football. There's priorities there.
Yeah, that's right. He was getting up at 6 a.m. doing a lesson, going to two-a-days in the summer, coming back, doing another lesson, or doing 2 more hours. So he was doing 3 hours during the summer, and then during school, he didn't get home from football until 5 o'clock, and his lesson started at 6. So he was at school all day, football, and then did his lesson at 6. And I've had more problem getting him to unload the dishwasher than I had trying to get him to make sure he was on line for his intervention. So
That's classic. Yeah, so Asher just blew through it. He took to it really well. He used, all the developmental activities he's been taken through to rebuild these phonological skills, rebuild the decoding skills. And he completed the whole program and got to an 11th grade level of reading material, got to 5 syllables, easily processing judgments of changes in single sounds, changes in syllables, add, omit, substitute, all the things we have to train to fully build that phonological system. He got through all of that in 80 sessions, which again is not what we ever promised anybody. We always have a motto in the company, which is under promise and over deliver. So I'd rather tell you 180, and if the kid gets done in 120, great, we're done. But your kid was done in 80. We're like, okay, Stephen, we're done. He's at a 11th grade level reading material, reading it at 98% accuracy. And it might sound odd, why would we take him to 11th grade? Well, because that's matching his IQ level. His IQ level is not 20th percentile or 50th percentile. Most people don't understand that grade level should never be the goal, because grade level starts around the 25th percentile. That's a really low bar. And even in the US, when we say these NAEP scores, the National Assessment of Educational Progress, we say, today and for the last 25, 30 years in the US, our school system has only gotten 36% of students to achieve reading proficiency. Well, that's horrible, because that means they're at least at the 25th percentile. That's all they have to be at, is to get that category of proficiency, which means proficient in reading accuracy, reading fluency speed, and reading comprehension. So we took Asher up to his IQ level, which is above the 50th percentile, which is why the reading books were above grade level. And he's got it. He's done. He's built the skills. We do some carryover to use the skills with your class material, and then we fade ourselves out of the picture, and we're not going to see him again. That's how true science-based, from randomized controlled trials research drives larger gains in a shorter amount of time. And again, these are studies that were tested 1 year after treatment stopped, and the skills are stronger.
Well,
2 years stop, the skills are stronger. So if you're using an intervention program, you should be asking them what research backs it up. Do you have randomized controlled trials? There are other programs out there that do have randomized controlled trials, but you want the one that has the largest gains, the largest impact. And I want somebody else go do another randomized controlled trial, get more effective than what we did. We're sure there's ways to do this even more effective.
Well, the research that I did was we were coming home from the doctor, and I asked him to read me the aftercare, the care paperwork that the doctor gave, and he started reading it, and it was a completely different kid. It was amazing. So I appreciate we're just about out of time, and Dr. Conway, I can't I can't say anything other than thank you, because through your program, you have not only given me my life back, but you've also given my child his life. and you've stopped the struggles that he's going to face or he would face. So I want to tell you, thank you so much. I could never repay, it wouldn't matter how much money, I could never repay that much, or anything to you. I'm in debt to you. I thank you so much.
Stephen, my pleasure. And let me just say one thing. This is something that was given to me like it was given to you guys. And that was at age 4 for me, age 6 for my brother, ages 7 for both of my children. So I'm driven by the quest to give back. People don't believe it, but I'm actually the volunteer CEO of the Now company. I don't take a salary. I don't get a shareholder distribution. I don't do dividends. And someone started a new myth recently to say, oh, it's a Caribbean company. We can't track its finances. Well, that's a lie. It's a U.S. company. And if you think people hide money in the Caribbean, you're way out of date. The way they track money in the Caribbean now from the U.S., you can't hide any money in the Caribbean, even if it was a Caribbean company.
Right.
The goal is get the services to as many kids as possible, and soon have the technology that helps us put it in the schools.
Well,
that's completely my goal. And people give me a lot of grief right now that I don't have teacher training. You're right. I did 20 years of teacher training. I know that what's going to take to make it effective, I have to have some technology there in place to make it work for fidelity, and we're building that as fast as we can. But right now, we can help out as well.
Let's pick that up on the next show. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on here. Thank you for all that you do. Again, thank you for the amazing job that you did with Asher and are doing with me. I just can't even say enough about it. So thank you very much. Real quick, I want to remind our viewers, please like and subscribe to us on our YouTube and Facebook channel, and all of the favorite apps that we have out there, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher. I'm going to put all of Dr. Conway's information in this description of this video. As always, we like to recommend at the very end of our show, if your child is struggling in these areas, please make sure that you don't wait. You need to write the letter to start the process and get your child tested. We have links on our website, www.empowerdyslexia.info. Go there, download the link, the template, put all your information in, turn it into your school. You'll be happy that you did. Your child will be happy that they're not struggling anymore. So again, Dr. Conway, thank you very much. We'll definitely have you back on and talk more about what's going on. But right now, that's all the time we have. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.